Welcome to the May 5th edition of Canada Live here on Orion Talk Radio. I see we have some folks in the chat. Always appreciated. It's been a weird week for me. Our mayor's going to China. I'll get into that later. But let me know if it's just my town or is every other town in Canada and Ontario suffering the same nonsense that we are here. I woke up this morning and looked out the window, and it was an absolutely gorgeous morning. Sky was just as blue as it could possibly be. I walked outside to have my morning smoke. I looked up. Right above my house is a chemtrail, or elongated contrail, according to Environment Canada. And as the morning went on, more and more planes were flying around. For the most part now, our beautiful blue sky is kind of a sick, milky, hazy, white, wispy color with bits of blue popping through here and there. But for the most part, the blue sky has been obliterated. And that was all done prior to noon. So, let me know if you too are being inundated with these stupid planes, because it's nice to know that I'm not the only one getting creamed by these things here. Anyways, it's been kind of a weird week. I've spent most of the week researching as normal. This mayor's trips to China, and it's been extremely strange, not unexpected, knowing who I'm dealing with, but extremely strange. I think we may have touched on this last week a little bit, I'm not sure, but I spent most of the week trying to get simple disclosure from my municipal hall on this trip. And I'd heard about it a ways back, but I didn't really pay much attention to it. I was busy with other things. And so I took a quick look at it, and apparently our mayor is going to go to China, and it's being paid for by a group called the Canada-China Investment Association. So I thought I'd look up the company and see what they're all about. There is no such company. Doesn't exist. Well, that leads to the next question. Why are we being told that our mayor is going to China and the trip being paid for by a company that doesn't exist? Doesn't make any sense. So I thought, well, I should phone up the municipal hall and get the lowdown on this and get some disclosure on the trip. When I called the municipal hall, they didn't seem to know anything about it, which is odd because our mayor is going to China. So I called up the deputy mayor at home and was told that what I asked her was, I said, what happened here? Did the mayor just show up at council and announce he was going to China and some company was paying for it, this Canada-China Investment Association? She goes, well, yeah, but it doesn't really matter. I'll go, why not? Who's funding this? She said, it doesn't matter. I said, the company doesn't exist. Doesn't matter. Why doesn't it matter? Well, because he's not going as the mayor. Well, that's what the headline says. Mayor going to China. Well, yeah, but he's also on the Bruce County Council, which is our next upper tier government. And so he's going in that capacity, not as mayor. Fine. I phoned the CAO at Bruce County. I'm told at that end that he is just, all they did was pay for his airfare, of which he is okay to go on 3 conferences per year, and they will pay the travel costs. But that's all they're doing. And no, he's not going in the capacity of a councillor of Bruce County. He is going as mayor of Kincardine. Well, back to Kincardine. So this nonsense goes on for days as I'm trying to get a simple thing like disclosure, of which I'm not getting. Some of the councillors I talked to just simply hung up on me. The CAO, who is the Chief Administrative Officer of the municipality, sent me the same stuff that I already knew about from the paper and nothing else, and said he'd contacted the mayor but didn't get any more information, and that I should contact the mayor myself. And several councillors told me the same thing. If I want to know what the mayor is up to, I should call the mayor. Why should I call the mayor? You're the council. You're the CAO. You know, am I the only one that is interested on who is paying for this trip, considering that the company in the newspaper reports doesn't even exist? You know, so the mayor says, well, you get a hold, or the CAO says, you get a hold of the mayor. And I had explained to the CAO last time I spoke to the mayor, I ended up with 3 police cruisers in my yard under false pretenses. So you're the CAO, you deal with it. To date, we still don't have any disclosure on the trip. A fellow researcher who I had mentioned this to found an outfit called the Penetangor Regional Development Corp, which is nothing more than an NGO paid by the local municipal taxpayers to schmooze the nonsense that's going on here. So I called them and talked to Jerry, the head guy there, and he told me that they actually had an email for the company. I said, well, that doesn't do anybody any good. What's the company? So it turns out the company isn't even called the Canada-China Investment Association. It is in fact called the China-Canada Business or Investment Association, which doesn't look much like much of a company. And I'll get some links in here shortly on this company and some of the other connections in the stories. But this has been going on for a long time now. I have an article from 2007 when they sent some lower mainland, BC lower mainland mayors to China. And the headline on that article is that the trip was illegal. You cannot, as an elected official, be taking favors from companies. You can't do it. Yet apparently they don't see a problem with it. But this is affecting us greatly because the mayors are being used as fronts at the local level. And always remember, global to local. Okay? The global influence on our country is being implemented at the local level. Just like Agenda 21 and sustainable development in your trail systems and all the rest of the nonsense that's going on in your community and every other community in Canada. What's going on here is a complete and total sellout of this country and its resources, and it looks like the Chinese are going to be huge players in this. The resources that we're not supposed to use, because if we cut down a tree or draw some water or dig a hole in the ground to get some ore, that we're hurting Mother Earth. And while half of our country, or not half our country, most of our country believes all this nonsense of global warming and sustainability and don't poke a hole in Mother Earth or cut down a tree, at the same time, those people who have had their minds inflicted with this nonsense are running around in that belief, and they think they're saving Mother Earth. Every resource in this country is being sold to offshore entities. And it looks like the Chinese are going to be the big player in this. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go into this. Okay, we're back. Canada Live. Yakking at, I hope, a whole bunch of Canadians who are saying to themselves, what the heck is going on in this country? Well, there's a lot going on in the country, but unfortunately most people don't have a clue what's going on. And that's not a mistake, okay? You're not supposed to know what's going on, because if you knew what was going on, you'd be up at your municipal hall, if not with a pitchfork, a rope, these people that call themselves your representatives are nothing but a bunch of treasonous dogs. I don't say that lightly. I just say it as a fact. Okay? They at the local level are doing the bidding of the globalists, and their job is to schmooze and soft shoe their agendas into your communities. And that makes them traitors. I mean, every municipal government that I know of in at least Ontario or anywhere else that has a gas tax money that's going to the municipal level is taking monies from a known traitor. It's not even the government of Canada. It's the Harper government and the Harper gas tax. And Harper stood at the podium of the G20 and explained exactly what the G20 meeting was about. This is about the loss of Canadian sovereignty. Some people don't like it, says Mr. Harper. Some people? I think the number's a little higher than that. The people knew that our Prime Minister stood there and said that the G20 meeting was not about investment in this and that and the other thing. But in fact, it was to show that we had lost our sovereignty and that he was a player in it. So any council, any municipal level government who accepts the gas tax money from Mr. Harper is in fact aiding and abetting treason. And these people need to be held accountable. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to do because the media is completely on side with this nonsense. And I say that because when I called the media who had reported on this story of the mayor going to China, when I called them to point out the error in their story, and I worked in media. I was a magazine reporter in Calgary years and years and years ago. Correct information is absolutely important. So I thought, well, I'll just call up some of the media and explain to them that there was a really bad mistake in their story, i.e. the company they said was paying for the mayor's trip, in fact, doesn't even exist. Now, an editor of any worth would be on this like Jack the Bear and say, what are you talking about? Because that's what we were told. Well, you should have checked it out, but you didn't. Maybe you got a small staff and you're busy and you can only do so much. I understand the time problems they have. But then I started getting excuses from them that, well, maybe the mayor inverted the name by mistake. Okay, that's plausible. That could happen. But then when I approached the council and the CAO, both at the county and municipal level, explaining the error, you would have thought that they would have jumped on that to make sure the information was correct as well. No such chance. The one Kincardine online news or whatever it's called, I'll put the link in sometime today. Now their paper is strictly digital. So I phoned them first, and I phoned the owner. They have several little papers going in, several little digital papers going in several little communities up and down the lakeshore here. So I phoned the owner of the company to explain the mistake and that they didn't have a problem fixing it because it's digital. All they got to do is go and fix that wording, put the right company name in, and reload it, and boom, problem fixed. Now I get a song and dance from the owner that I should talk to the reporter. Why should I talk to the reporter? You're the owner of the company. You talk to the reporter. Better still, you just go ahead and fix it from your head office. It's like the CAO and the counselors telling me that they don't know anything that I should contact. Why am I always contacting all these people? So anyways, I called up the reporter who had a hissy fit and had no intention of fixing anything, and to date it has not been fixed. The person, this Sophia Ming's son, who started this nonprofit called the China-Canada Investment Association, is not in the articles is not the founder of the company. She's merely a member of the company, which is more wrong information. I called the local newspaper, the Kincardine News, and the editor there, who I have mentioned Agenda 21 to numerous times, who calls me a conspiracy nutcase, and was extraordinarily belligerent when I brought up this mistake in his newspaper, and they have no intention of fixing, nor do they care. What he said, well, I'm sure the mayor will debrief us when he returns from his trip. Maybe, maybe not. He didn't give you any disclosure before his trip. What makes you think he's going to give you any disclosure after his trip? Anyways, he got off the deep end on me again. And the kicker with the Kincardine News that people have to understand is, repeatedly I've been called conspiracy nut by this editor of the Kincardine News for bringing up Agenda 21 and how it is going to decimate the rights of the people in our communities. Either he fails to understand, and I doubt it, but if you search for the Kincardine News is owned by Sun Media. Sun Media is owned by Quebecor. Who's on the board of directors of Quebecor? Brian Mulroney, our ex-prime minister. Who brought Agenda 21 to Canada? Brian Mulroney. So here we have the editor of a newspaper whose owners have the guy who brought Agenda 21 to Canada calling me a conspiracy nut. So, the media, I saw a note here in the chat from Brandy that she had the same chemtrail problem today as we have here. I'm not sure where Brandy's from, but that she's going to stay on the newspaper. Well, good luck with that one. The newspapers are the property of the rich men, and they do the bidding of the rich men. Period. Okay, welcome back, Canada Live, Orion Talk Radio, May the 5th. And welcome to Canada, or what's left of Canada is vanishing rapidly. The Canada you thought you knew probably never even existed, not if you research history. You can go back to MacDonald, who was a flunky for the Rockefeller clan, and it's been downhill basically ever since. Power Corp, who brought us Morris Strong and our prime ministers and a ton of our politicians, have absolute control over our political, and have had for decades. And they are basically one of the groups, along with the Rockefellers and the other tax-exempt groups, who were the ones that were instrumental in sucking our factories out of our countries. I say country, and I'm talking mainly United States and Canada, because we're both in the same boat. And now they are promoting the idea that our economy's really dead, and that we need investment from China to help us out. This is all about them making more money and getting more control. All the factories are in China, or most of the factories are in China and the East. That's where we get our goods from now. There's a problem. There's a cost to moving resources to China, manufacturing them, and then moving them back So what we're in the process of is them making more money at our expense, at our country's expense. And the idea is basically pretty simple. Already in the United States, they have large pieces cut off called free trade zones. Some of these are upwards of 50 square miles, where they're going to build Chinese factories and Indonesian factories and Bangladeshi factories, and through the trade agreements and that. These are basically countries within our country because they don't have to abide by our labor laws or our wage laws. And the idea behind it is that instead of shipping raw materials to China and then shipping them back, it's more feasible and cost effective just to bring the labor to where the resources are. Of course, this is going to be sold as a benefit to our countries, that it will increase productivity and it will have lots of spin-off jobs attached to it. Well, do we really want slave labor in our countries? I mean, even if somehow that they could bring in this offshore cheap labor and somehow make spin-off white-collar jobs or something administrating this nonsense, do we really want slave labor from any country? Do we want slaves brought into our country who are outside our laws to benefit these multinational corporations? I hope not. And our local mayors and our local municipal governments are just completely complicit and guilty of destroying our country from the inside. Now, there was a document I saw several years ago, and it's got to be it's on one of my computers somewhere. I don't know where. The reason that the municipal elections changed from every 3 years to every 4 years, explicitly told in these documents, was that the players were afraid that they wouldn't get everything in place in 3 years. And they were very afraid that people will wake up before they get everything implemented and kick these clowns out and put real people who know their duty to represent their local communities in place. And that's why you now have a 4-year municipal term. Not to streamline things and not to bring them in with the provincial elections or the federal elections. This is specifically so that the local mayors and the municipal governments and the county governments can work to implement the program set down to them from the global level to take power. Or as Rockefeller said, something has to take the place of government, and business seems to be the obvious entity to do it. And that's exactly what we're in now, okay? We are in the middle of massive corporatism, or as Stalin referred to it, or he referred to fascism, should be rightly called corporatism, because it is a merging of government and business. And damn be the people. Well, what we have to get through people's head is that the government, not government nor business, rules this land. This is our land. This is our children's land. This is our grandchildren's land. We own the land. We own the resources. And we've got to step up to the plate somehow. I don't know how. I've been trying to encourage people for years. Some people are starting to get it, finally. Some people are starting to sniff around and go, why is China buying up these companies? I mean, my nephew used to work for a company called Westcast, makes manifold parts over in Wingham, Ontario. It was closed down because it wasn't competitive or something. And he now works as a maintenance guy in a local arena, which it doesn't pay anywhere near what he was making at Westcast. So what are we going to do with this big Westcast plant sitting there idle? I know, we'll sell it to the Chinese. That's right, the Chinese bought the plant. $180 million plant is now owned by a Chinese company in a small rural town in Ontario. And they're going to end up bringing their workers in here because they said they shut the plant down because it wasn't competitive. Well, how are you going to make it competitive? Drop the labor cost. So, and the mayors are all, oh, this is wonderful. We're going to have employment back in our community. Well, we have to get back to manufacturing in our own country. And we got to get the duties back on. Okay, that's what allowed these multinationals to suck our industries out of our countries in the first place. We cannot compete with $1 an hour paychecks. Can't do it. And if we're going to have industry in this country and people are going to have a decent living in this country, there has to be duties put back on. Free trade is the death of a country. Free trade is a race to the bottom. You cannot compete with $1 an hour and live as Canadians expect to live. You have to have the duties in. And you say, well, that thwarts competition. No, it doesn't. I am all for competition. The more competition, the better. But there has to be some kind of a level playing field. Okay? You cannot, it's impossible, absolutely impossible to compete with that kind of wage level. If you want to build a running shoe, and I've said this a million times, you want to build a running shoe in China and it costs you $2 to build a shoe, fine, build a shoe. It costs us $10 to build the same shoe here. So if we're going to build shoes in this country for our own people, we got to be competitive. Now, we're either going to drop our wages down to $1 an hour to be competitive, which is slave labor, which nobody would put up with. Just sticking with these crooked mayors here for a bit. Richard Fadden, okay, who is kind of an odd duck, or I call him an odd duck. He's a career civil servant. And on the one hand, he actually helped bring about Kyoto to Canada. But then he was moved to CSIS as the head of CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. Now, Mr. Fadden, if you can look this up. I don't have time right now to go find the video clip, but if you can find, if you just type in Richard Fadden, I'm sure you'll run into the clip. Anyways, Mr. Fadden, head of CSIS, was very concerned about this Chinese connection in Canada, and that the mayors and not just mayors, they came later because you always use your top politicians first and then bring it to the local level from there. That's the same thing we saw with Agenda 21. That came at the national and then into provincial and then into the county and the local levels. So, this whole China connection starts at the top, obviously. And Mr. Fadden was quite concerned of this political influence that was going on. And he was concerned that, in fact, what was going on with this China connection was a threat to Canadian sovereignty. And he brought this up. Well, he gave a speech to a parliamentary committee or whatever, and they basically just jumped all over him. It's all a conspiracy theory, right? Just like Agenda 21. These are your politicians telling the head of CSIS that he's full of crap and to shut up. Just shut up and go away. You're just another one of them crazy people. Another crazy Canadian. Our sovereignty's solid. There's no connection. There's no conspiracy with China. or the Politico. Unfortunately, after this all happened, Mr. Fadden is no longer head of CSIS. He's been moved off to defense. He's been appointed the top civil servant post within the Department of Defense, but no longer intelligence services. So they basically moved him out of a hot seat. They don't want his voice heard. They don't want his voice getting to the Canadian people. And so, you know, if our head of CSIS can't even speak the truth in this country, we got a problem. The mayors, I don't normally read newspapers, but when I was doing some research here on this subject, I ran across a article from the National Post. I'll stick that in the chat. And it's kind of an interesting little story, which I've now lost. But it goes on about how here it is, how politicians are taken to China. And, China's honeypot spy games, Canadians must be wary of sexpionage. Which as you go through the story, I'll just do this really quick. Canadian Security Intelligence Services CSIS Director Richard Fadden was right all along. According to former Chinese spies speaking to Security Conference Wednesday, the Ministry of State Security has long targeted foreign politicians. Lai Genzi, or whatever, who defected in 2003, told a conference in Gatineau that China wants to steal commercial secrets and influence the politicians. They want more than that. They want complete and total access to this country. China wants to find some important, influential people to speak out on behalf of China or for China. They pay attention to this. Mr. Fadden got into hot water last year when he said municipal officials and provincial cabinet ministers from 2 provinces were under the influence of the Chinese government. He backed off from his comments after loud criticism from Chinese Canadian groups. Mr. Lai was asked if he thought the recent incident involving Tory MP Bob Deckert was a case of espionage. I'm not sure if she is an informant of the Chinese Secret Service, but they often use reporters as cover. He said the parliamentary secretary to the Foreign Affairs Ministry admitted sending flirtatious emails to the journalist. Okay, so China is a huge country of 1.3 billion people. China, at this point in time, really doesn't run China. Who's running China? The same international dogs that are running here in the United States and Australia and Britain. And to Sean out there, you got it, buddy, Scotland. Okay? This is international corporate power that's in play here. And they are using the governments with each other, against each other. Now, it says down here that they're using, they try to get our political people into compromising positions. So we can only hope that our mayors all get lucky while they're over there in China, and that we somehow can expose that fact, that they are in fact real traitors. There's no reason. I mean, if you look at anything logically, to take mayors from small Ontario, rural Ontario communities and send them to the China under the guise that these people have any capacity whatsoever to cut any kind of a trade deal, you can't come to any kind of a logical conclusion there other than that this is political influencing, and that Mr. Fadden was right all along. Our own elected officials are in cahoots with the international corporations and the Chinese government to give them both influence and control and access to our resources and our country. And every single Canadian has a duty to expose this garbage. Now, over the last few days since I outed this illicit, illegal, non-existent company that supposedly is financing this trip to China with these mayors, I think I'm getting a lot of traffic on my blog from Markham all of a sudden. In fact, as soon as I spoke to the media and the CAO here, I started getting a lot of hits from Markham. I'm also getting a lot of hits from different government agencies. Now, I have a funny feeling that Markham and some of these government agencies keep coming to my blog looking for the story. Well, the story's not going to hit my blog first, folks. Okay? Just to let you know, I'm not the only one out there that knows what the hell's going on. Some fellow researchers, I've sent them a lot of stuff. They continued the research, have dug deeper and deeper and deeper, and it just keeps getting uglier. And I do have a blogger who, unlike myself, has no contact information, and he's a fellow researcher, has no contact information whatsoever on that blog. That story, which will be much easier to follow than what I'm babbling about today, because all the links are there, all the players are there, will hit the blogosphere, as people call it, at the conclusion of this show. And I have a link to that particular blog off my blog, CanadianTruths.wordpress.com. I encourage everyone to go to CanadianTruths.wordpress.com later this afternoon or tomorrow